Hey, Steve Basic Architect from the Unbuild It podcast. Yeah, if you're in Providence on Friday, March 24th or Saturday, March 25th, guess what's happening? You guessed it, JLC Live. It's one of my favorite conferences, Providence, Rhode Island. And while you're there, don't forget to stop by the Huber booth. They're located in booth 239. They also have a happy hour on the afternoon of Friday, March 24th. So, yeah, you get to meet professional colleagues and have a beer on Huber. So while you're there, also be sure to check out Mike Slogat's Builders Workshop. Mike he's a longtime friend of the Unbuild It podcast and does a beautiful workshop. And Aaron Jones, Big Dog up in Canada, will be also presenting at JLC Live this year. And he joins a great group of presenters, including all of your favorite regular JLC attendees. So it's going to be another great show, especially that happy hour. So make sure you join us. Booth 239, JLC Live 23.
Welcome to the Unbuild It podcast. I'm Jake Bruton. Today I'm joined by my co-host, Steve Basic.
Howdy.
And Peter Yost.
Right here.
Duty.
And this Buckethead. And this is a continuation of last week's episode. We had an amazing question from a listener, Suzanne in Bozeman, Montana, in which she basically just said, if you're putting an addition on, what's the standard that you should worry about building it to? Can you do too much? Can you hurt the house? And we kind of thought we would get to renovating at the same time, remodeling, and we didn't. So today we're going to work on that. And we're not going to recap last week's episode any further than that. Go back and listen to it.
Yep.
Don't go out of order. Start at episode 1 and work your way up to this.
Listen to them all 7 times. That's the science.
Exactly. So I want to start. The reason that I'm hosting is I want to start by saying, like, here are the things that we do when we're going to renovate in my home market in Columbia, Missouri. And let's start from the energy standpoint, and then we'll talk about some things that aren't necessarily energy standpoint. So the municipality that we work in here is Columbia, Missouri, and they have energy audit programs where they can do an assessment of your house, and then independent auditor does an assessment of your house, and then gives you a list of things that you're supposed to do that you could get money back for, and they will help on some things more than others. And they give a hierarchy. They even give you I think it's $100 per one ACH 50 that you can get down.
So if I get like 24 ACH 50, I got like $2,400. Is that what you're telling me?
I think it's the opposite. Oh. But can you imagine how much work has to go in to, I mean, some of them are like, make sure the windows are locked probably, and that helps. But one of the things that we discovered immediately when those programs went into place, the big one for us is attic insulation. If we're going to get in the attic and we're going to be disturbing things and we're wanting to put more insulation in, there's a great one. We start with, come do the assessment before we start our work. And when we're done and the insulation guy needs to come and do his work, now we got it paid for. So there's a ton of stuff that falls into that category, windows or furnaces, things like that. But I wanted to start our conversation with like, okay, well, we thought about it beforehand. So from a design perspective, when you're designing a remodel, you're thinking about it beforehand. Where does this wind up for you?
I think the first thing that we would think of, or the first thing I would think about, is how much can I save? Like, how little do we have to actually do? Like, when you first meet a client, it's always funny. Oh, we want to put on like a 20 by 30 addition off the back, new family room and all of this. And then it's like, well, what are we going to do with this front room? Oh, I don't know. We really don't use it. So we're probably just not. Okay, well, maybe we should look at a design that we do use it.
Maybe we could use that family room instead of building a new one.
Or take a wall down or two inside and double the size of your existing living room, and then that becomes a new dining room, and then we put a smaller family room on the backside or something. I don't know. But, you know, the first thing is how well can we utilize what we have before we actually do it is the first step. And then the second step is once we kind of have that under under control, then we look at, well, how much can we extend this work into the existing work to make that better, right? And make that part of the new work.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's like, okay, we're putting this addition on the back and we're going to reshingle the back of the house. Do we reshingle the front of the house too? Sorry. Or, how much siding? Is this a good time to replace all the windows in the house or just the windows on the back elevation or side elevation where we're putting this? Or do we not even replace any windows? So trying to get a feel for, is there any budget to extend beyond the initial project? And if so, where does it go?
It's funny. I was not expecting to go in this direction because...
Sorry.
I was not expecting to go in this direction because when you started off with it being driven by an energy project, the first 2-day building science training I developed in Vermont was for SEVCA, which is the weatherization program in southern Vermont. They were having all kinds of problems because they would go in and add insulation, and then they would have moisture problems worse than when they started. So that spurred this, hey, we can't look at just energy. We have to look at moisture too, which means
you should manage energy and moisture
with equal intensity.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
We know Pete's mantra.
And so they were looking to protect the investment that was made in energy efficiency by making sure they got the moisture management correct first. So when you're talking about how far is too far, to me, it's always got to start with how's the building working today? And quite often you're going to find that even if the moisture and energy balance is okay, you're going to shift it. And so if you're going to shift how energy is managed, you're almost certainly going to have to shift how moisture is managed.
So that's in our client intake process, both for new and renovations. One of our 20 questions that they have to answer is how long have you been in your current home? On the new construction side, that means if they complain about something at their house, I can know if they've lived there for 6 months, they probably don't know what they hate yet. But if they've been there for 20 years, they know for darn sure what they don't like. On the renovation side, when somebody says that, if you've been there for 10 years, I can probably suss out of you what is actually wrong with the house, both aesthetically, functionally, mechanically, whatever it is. And I can suss out what you don't like is going to be honest. But if you bought the house last fall and you've only lived there since last fall, chances are you don't truly understand how the house lives yet and what you like about it. If you haven't been there for a whole year, you might have a bedroom that's west facing that in the summer you don't like living in,
right,
but you moved in right before school started and it was a mild into summer. So like I have to gain a better understanding of how they operate to understand what we're going to be able to do and where we want to put our money. And that how far is too far conversation quickly goes to, okay, well, windows might make more sense or mechanicals might make more sense.
What the clients often see is, wait a minute, I came to talk to you about a bathroom remodel, and now all of a sudden you're talking about like my whole house. That seems like business creep.
Yeah, what an upsell.
Yeah. There was 2 remodelers in, I think it was the Houston area, Texas, the Brothers Strong, they were called. If you called them to do a bathroom remodel, they'd say, we'll come out and do a bid, but we have to come and do a free building assessment first. What? A free what? And so they never did any advertising because they got so much business off of, we're going to come and do a free building assessment so that we don't, do something to your house that gets stepped on by the next project because you didn't tell us what was next, or you have serious problems that with the way the building performs and you don't want to have to do a bathroom remodel when you have actually more serious sort of systemic problems to consider.
Yeah. So from a non-building science standpoint, that's one of the, our market has lots of people that haven't lived here before. We have constant growth. We get people that move here and they call and say, hey, we bought this house. Our kids are going to start there in the fall. We need to get it renovated over the summer before we relocate to Columbia. This is what we want done. And from a non-building science standpoint, one of the things that we do is we camera all the drain lines.
Right.
Like we can't agree to put 50 grand into a bathroom or 100 grand into a kitchen or whatever it is. And then you turn the water on the first time when you move in and have drain line issues that now we're digging up the front yard and you've already spent all of your money.
And I'm picking up my pen because I have a building assessment form and it does not include camera in the sewer line. I'm going to add that.
Making business notes.
Yeah.
Care to interject?
No.
Okay.
It's a public assessed colonoscopy.
Are you talking about his sewer drains?
Yeah.
Oh, a public assessed colonoscopy.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So then,
is that part of the marketing materials?
So then where does the conversation go when somebody says, well, we want to put on new siding while we do the front door?
Well, for me, it's no different than designing a new house, remodeling. I mean, at some point, we're making decisions and the opportunities are pretty much the same, right? Like, okay, we're going to put new siding on the house. All right. Do we just put up a new building paper, a rain screen, and the siding? Do we put up an insulating sheathing? How are we going to insulate the wall? How are we going to approach it? What are our assemblies going to look like? How are we going to change it? How much of that siding are we taking off? What are we putting back? Is it historic? Is there historical references that we need to be controlled by? So there's a whole bunch of things.
We're still looking at what is the least we can do here to make sure that people are happy?
Yeah, I mean, that's tied to the energy and it's tied to the budget, right? I mean, people come to us because supposedly we're the professionals. And I mean, homeowners, for the most part, don't. Well, okay. I wasn't going to come down on you, but if you want to come down on yourself and condemn yourself, then go ahead. But it's, almost every client comes with kind of not a really good understanding of what, although they come and tell you, I know exactly what we want to do. No, you don't.
I think the really tough thing is, and I just went to a project yesterday or the day before where it's an older New England building. The clapboards are face sealed. There's no building paper underneath of it. A lot of flush gables, older windows. And when you talk to them about improving the performance of the building, the cladding needs to come off. You need to add a WRB, even if you're not talking about a rain screen or rigid insulation. The windows are not flashed. They have to come out. Do they have to be replaced?
But my house isn't having any problems right now.
So they want to improve the performance of the building, but holy smokes, I was talking about putting cellulose insulation in the walls by, drilling holes across removed clapboards. And now all of a sudden you're telling me I have to completely deconstruct the outside of my building. It's not an easy conversation for sure. And, telling them, well, you'll feel better after you understand how things are connected. No, you won't.
No, you'll be more afraid of your house.
You'll be more afraid of it. Well, this client that I went to just this week, he said, I've read enough to understand that I should be terrified. But how do you peck away at that? How do you peck away at the fact that you have a face sealed cladding with no WRB behind it and none of the windows are flashed?
Sounds like a good time to move.
They actually moved to this house.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's a beautiful property.
We all make choices in life, I guess. So I have a, we'll call it a hypothetical, but we'll be honest and say it's a current project that we're working on. One that you and I drove by. So the house is built in the 20s, single width, brick cladding, 2x4 cavity, kind of a preserved vent space on most of it. Everywhere that we've gotten into it, it does have a good space between, and there is a building paper between the brick and the board sheathing.
Ooh.
There is, so we're doing a kitchen renovation. North facing and west facing are our exterior walls. And when we get everything down, as you would expect, no insulation. Do you add insulation while you're there? if you're going to add insulation, do you add something like a mineral wool insulation that's less likely to be bothered by moisture? Do you then have concerns about putting drywall over top of it? Do you then also call your cabinet shop and make sure that they're not using a particle board with a sticker facer on the backside of their cabinets, and they're using actual plywood, and maybe ask for an extra ventilated space behind it? Where do you draw the line? Because if you go in there and go, we'd love to do this kitchen for you, but we're not going to put insulation in the walls and make the house any more comfortable. Where do we land? It's brick. The house is brick, 4 sides brick.
Yeah, I can't think of a tougher situation than you're going from the inside. You can't touch the exterior. You're unable to improve the WRB relationship to flashings, if there are any. You've got a super durable cladding with everything behind it that needs to be changed. Yeah.
So Pete's not going to give any sort of answer.
No.
He's going to fence.
I agree with Pete.
Yeah, thanks. Seriously though, do you have concerns? It's climate zone 4. Like I said, one wall is north face, one wall is west face. They both have conditioned basement below, conditioned living space above, low load occupancy. It's a 3-person home at max for the entire life of this kitchen.
Yeah. Jake, this is actually an excellent question, because let's assume that I was working with you on this project. So the first thing I would do is
shoot myself.
Get permission to do pin extended moisture readings on the backside of the sheeting. Ooh. And I do it at all the vulnerable points. So we're going to have to get permission to do 3/16" 2 holes paired to get the pins in and get it to the backside of the siding to see what's going on there. Because that's way less expensive than telling them, once we get the plaster down and we're looking at open cavities, we'll be able to see whether there's rot or moisture staining. And then we can tell you just how scary the budget's going to be. So we're going to have to do non-invasive exploration from the inside to try to figure out what kind of shape it's in. Because if we find that the walls, for instance, have been getting some condensation on the inside of them because there's no insulation and there's wintertime condensation, but it dries out all the time, and we have water staining, but we don't have any rot or punkiness. Okay, now that's important because, can we maybe do some improvement to how wet the wall gets from the outside? Maybe add a silane to the brick, so we can reduce the amount of wetting that's getting through the brick. Check overhangs, make sure we've got protection there, and then decide, okay, we can shift the balance enough, reduce the wetting of the cladding with a coating, make the building. I think you would be unable to compromise on the fact that this has got to be an airtight. You got to allow us to do an airtight approach to these walls. Now, that's not going to be mineral wool. So I thought I was headed to a solution.
Okay, so now the room is demoed. There's no staining that we've found. I think that we're leaning towards, like I said, mineral wool insulation, and then some sort of smart vapor retarder on the interior face, potentially, but we're still wrestling with it ourselves. We have a couple weeks to make the decision.
Can you detail that smart vapor retarder as an air control layer?
For that section of the wall.
Yeah. What's the sheathing? Plywood?
It's board sheathing.
Board sheathing.
Yeah.
What if you just went in and shot 2 inches of close cell and called it a day?
Yeah.
It can dry on both sides, right? Because if it's got good vent space, it means the board sheathing is drying on the backside. If you only spray 2 inches, the studs can dry to the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's R13 with a pretty decent airtightness.
The difficulty is going to be that it's not really continuous, that insulation. So it's going to seal well per bay. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. maybe if you did that and you could back it up with depressurizing the building with a blower door and then do an infrared camera work to convince yourself that you've gotten the
enough
biggest
of a seal.
enough of a seal. Yeah. I think so.
What's
How
the
much
benefit of, so in your mind, what's the plus of sealing each bay with spray foam versus sealing with the Myrex? Because we can get the Myrex airtight to the same places that we can get the spray foam.
Yeah. You get the insulation in there. I mean, I guess doing it with like a rock wool or cellulose or something, and then putting Myrex on there is probably not much different. You've just displaced the air barrier.
Well, you've really accelerated the drying of that sheathing to the interior, right? Because with the closed cell up against it.
Yeah, we opened one other
but
side.
If it's vented, he said it was vented well, so that's why.
It appears to be.
Yeah.
No, not full of
And
mortar
it's board
droppings.
sheathing, which is going to dry really quick.
Yep.
And it's probably not going to get really wet.
I guess-
And we're talking about lumber from the 1920s. It's really good quality stuff.
Steve, it's a really good question. I would err towards vapor open in both directions as much as possible because you may need extra drying
So
potential.
we blow thermal fiber, rock wool instead of cellulose, and put Myrex on the inside and call it a day.
So this issue though of, okay, we're doing a super good job on that one section of the building. And this gets back almost to how,
Where do we draw the line?
Where do we draw the line?
Well, the good thing about the other parts of the house is they're pretty much got good drying potential.
Well, they do. So the benefit of you've got that wall open.
You'll be cozy and warm in the kitchen. You'll just freeze everywhere else.
Well, you'll be warm when you're close to that wall. So I guess the answer is do the best job you can on whatever section you get exposed
That's
to.
where we were leading.
Yeah.
I was hoping that we wouldn't even come to a conclusion. I hadn't brought this up on purpose, but that was why we drove by that house on the way here, because I wanted you to see it.
Really interesting.
It's an incredibly difficult conversation. It's a very difficult, where do we draw the line? How do we spend the client's money? Where do we decide that our effort goes?
So I'm going to take a leap here and go ahead in time 50 years, right? For everybody listening, this is why it's very important that we make good decisions now. So in 50 years, we're not repeating this discussion, right? When people say, yeah, those windows, those are good enough, or we don't really need to flash those windows, or yeah, we don't really need to insulate that to that crazy level. We can just do that. Well, you're not going to get a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other day I shot a video. We had just put insulation under the slab, and I said on camera, I said, everybody take a look. Hopefully nobody sees this insulation again for about 150 years, right? Which is possible.
Yeah, or
If
longer.
you do it right.
Or longer.
Yeah.
So
What's the oldest house that you ever worked on?
the original oldest house was built in 1690.
How many times do you think they had a conversation like this over that time period?
It had corn cob in the walls, like cut to the width of the wall. All the studs had live edges, at least on one side, sometimes two. It had a rock outcropping in the front bedroom that was probably 30 inches tall and came into the room probably 5 or 6 feet. And they just had a carpet.
Freezing.
They just had a carpet that went up over the top.
When
of
did
it.
you work on this house?
We probably did this project, I don't know, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, a while ago. And I mean, we did like $1 million, at that time, $1 million addition to it.
Because I worked on a building that was 1700s on the Cape, on the historic register. There were floor beams sitting right in the dirt.
Oh yeah,
that
this
weren't
one
rotten.
I got
that weren't
pictures
rotten.
of it. Yeah,
I just could
Old
not
growth
believe
trees.
it. Well, old growth
soil.
trees
And the
and
ability to
not
dry.
just dry soil. The fires going inside the house, blasting the living daylights out of it all winter long. And then he's asking me, well, how are we going to get to those beams? And I said, there's only two ways to do it. You jack up the house, or you completely rip up the floorboards, the subfloor, and try to get at it like stepping between. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. No, this house, the second floor, this one was probably right around 6 foot. I had to hunch over, crawling over. I did one in another town. It was like 1754 or something like that. The upstairs was like 5'5". Like, and the beds, like if you remember, beds in the old days were higher.
Yeah.
So you get closer to the ceiling where it was warmer. Like,
You get up too fast and you slam your head into the ceiling.
I mean, it was like you were on the top bunk and you were just on the first in the regular floor. But I remember, and that house probably had about a 2,400 square foot footprint. So it was a very sizable second floor to be like 5'4", 5'6". Like I felt
buildings that have historical significance they're just absolutely the hardest.
Well, and so your comment about, well, we hope nobody ever sees this insulation again, or it's 150 years or whatever. That's what we strive for as new construction builders. I always tell people that our houses should be three things. They should be efficient, they should be durable, and they should be architecturally significant. And when I say that, I give them a spiel about if it costs a ton to live there, you're not going to want to maintain living there. If it's uncomfortable to live there or unhealthy to live there, you're not going to want to continue to live there. And if it's ugly, your kids aren't going to care for it, and they're not going to want to inherit it and renovate it and care. And what we're talking about here is houses that are older than any of our great-great-grandparents. Yeah. And people are still caring for them. And I think that we should take that seriously as well as when we renovate. Yeah. Like we should be
90. That's almost 100 years before independence.
Yeah. I mean, that's
84 years before.
But that's an incredibly important thing that like we tend to look at things in this kitchen's going to get renovated in 40 years. At the latest, might last 15, but we have to look at things from a bigger picture, and we have to be thinking about our impact of what we're causing and the impact of what that means down the line too.
But because of our approach to making the buildings perform well, it's really asking the client to take the long view, and
our society doesn't do that.
Yeah, and one project I worked on, the first time I showed up at the house, it was a widow, and she had built the house with her husband, and it was the one where there was Tyvek put up as sort of cosmetic. There was no detailing. Some of the places that were up high apparently never got even house wrap or building paper, but there was no flashing around the windows. And I told her, I said, I know you were hoping to try to figure out how to like put vinyl siding over this or something, but you've got serious problems that go right to the sheathing. And she's looking at me like, you're asking me to completely take apart the outside of this house. And what do you say? I mean, that's the way. And by the way, while you're there, we have to reflash the windows, so they have to come out. And now she said, oh, so is this when I should replace the windows? So we've gone from a budget of maybe $10,000 to repaint the house or something, to now recleaning the house, which was probably $60,000. Well, let's replace all 42 of the windows.
You don't see many budgets, do you?
I don't.
All right.
I don't.
His numbers say, well, maybe we go from repainting the house for $10,000 to replacing the windows up to 40. It's
I shouldn't have said anything.
We go from repainting the house for $40,000 to replacing the windows to $90,000.
I should have definitely held back on any numbers at all.
A theory that the first time that you're acutely aware of something, what it costs, that's what it costs the rest of your life. So when we look at things now and we go, who would pay $100,000 for a pickup? That's ridiculous. They are selling them all the time.
Yeah.
And I bought a car for my oldest for his 16th birthday. I was fairly certain when I said I'm going to buy a car for you for your birthday, I was getting in for the same $2,400 that I bought my first POS for. So I really do think that the first time that we're aware of what something costs, that's what it costs the rest of your life, unless you put forth.
And I'm going to beat him to the punch. If that were true for me, we'd be like, "You want to repaint this house for $100?"
Yeah. I'm being nice.
Did you hand mix paint at any point? Like, did you have to crush pigment on a rock and then dump it into a tightly woven basket?
No. Oh my gosh. You guys there's no end.
Don't say you guys. I didn't say anything bad yet.
yet. Do we have a Pete's resource for this or resource?
Well, yes.
Resource?
I'm going to
Z. It's R-E-Z-O-R-C-E.
It's Canadian.
resource.
Z-O-R.
Definitely the building assessment, which is on my website. But we'll
And your website is?
buildingright.com with a dash in the middle and a W at the beginning of right.
Good luck finding it the way he described it.
No kidding. I got a question for you both.
Please.
So if I only believe in 12.5% of the Bible, does that make me an atheist?
So there was a little bit of math in there, a little bit of humor, a little bit of sacrilegious. It was good. I like it.
Thank you.
You've been like
I've been hiding.
you've been listening to a bunch of
It's a
humor
newfound
on
hobby.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Okay. You should work harder at it.
No, I'm doing just fine.
On that note, now that everyone listening has went ahead and turned everything off.
They want to hear more.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
I can't wait till we start publishing these and people are actually asking.
If you'd like to hear more, go to Steve's Instagram account.
Yeah.
How would you know I even have one?
Just
You don't.
saying.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Subscribe on Instagram. Tell a friend and wait for the next one.
Ooh,
Can't
I
wait.
can't wait.
Have a good day.
Goodbye.